Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you're joining us from. I hope that music gave you a little bit of energy before today's webinar. You're very welcome to our fourth and final Startup Women webinar of 2024, Crafting Your Customer's Journey. I'm Isabel Nolan. I'm the Director of Programs at Startup Canada. Today, I would like to begin to take a moment to acknowledge the land on which I am on today. It's located on the unceded and traditional territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh Nations, also known as Vancouver. As we are a national organization, I also want to acknowledge with respect the diverse histories and cultures of all Indigenous peoples. And I encourage you to take a moment to acknowledge the traditional territory that you're residing on today. We welcome everyone to connect with each other in the chat. Make sure that you are sending your messages to everyone in the room. It's a small setting you have to adjust in the chat. Zoom defaults it to only send to myself and the hosts. So you'll just need to adjust that to be sending it to everyone. Today's session will be recorded and we will upload it to our YouTube channel afterwards as a living resource. So a little bit about Startup Canada, if you're not familiar with us, we're a national nonprofit. We act as the gateway to Canada's entrepreneurial ecosystem. And we're here to connect entrepreneurs with support, community, and tools that they need to build a successful business in Canada. And since launching in 2012, we've grown to support more than 130,000 entrepreneurs annually and an ever-growing community of ecosystem partners from coast to coast to coast. And dedicated to showing up for women all year round, Startup Women is an annual program offering support for early stage women identifying entrepreneurs across Canada through topic focused webinars like this, industry advisory circles, and meetups with Startup Women leaders. You know that when you support women, you really do support a nation. Before we get started, we have a very short message from one of our co-presenting partners, the Scotiabank Women Initiative.
The Scotiabank Women Initiative is dedicated to your success on your terms.
I'm shaping our industry's vision for the future.
I can expand my business without borrowing from my family.
I know I can face anything thanks to my network.
I'm ready for my next chapter.
I'm inspiring future leaders.
I'm making sure my family's future is secure.
Define your success, and we'll help you achieve it. With unbiased access to capital and tailored solutions, bespoke specialized education, and holistic advisory services and mentorship. Join our community of women today, the Scotiabank Women Initiative.
And I'd also like to invite someone from our other co-presenting partner, UPS. They've been our biggest supporter and cheerleader for the longest time, really. So I'd love to pass it over to Rowena Sang. She's the Director of Strategy, Segmentation, and Customer Experience at UPS. Over to you, Rowena.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Thanks for having me, and good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you today, speaking about something that is very dear to myself as well as UPS. And I'm always excited to wake up to really engage with the customer and really focused on the customer experience. As you know, today, customer experience expectations are evolving faster than ever. In this age of instant gratification, next day delivery is a little too late. We want everything now. And it's not just about getting packages from point A to B, it's about delivering on the promise and creating a very meaningful connection at every step of the journey. So at UPS, we're not only focused on moving goods, we're focused on moving experiences to an elevated level, whether it's ensuring that a small business gets their product to a customer on time, or that an individual receives a gift on their special day. The experience we provide is just as important as the package we deliver. So we know that every single touch point, from our driver's engagement to the ease of tracking, to even the lasting impact on the way you and your customers perceive our brand. More importantly, we know the experience that UPS delivers on your behalf could really impact your brand as well. That is why we've made it a priority to listen closely to our customers. We're innovating constantly and we're continuously improving our service to meet the ever-changing needs and the demands of ourselves. I myself, in the past 3 years, have read through over 10,000 verbatim responses from our customers, keeping myself, as well as the company, the pulse on the voice of the customer. And I myself even have contacted and called customers personally to resolve situations. That's how important customer experience is, not just to UPS, but to ourselves as well and to myself. So we take this very seriously. And I encourage all of you in this session to really kind of share your best practices, your journey through navigating how you actually develop a very customer-focused business. And as a society, as we move towards valuing the experience, how we accentuate that, not just in the product, but also in the final mile, all the way to post-purchase, connecting with your customers. So I look forward to hearing everyone's thoughts, your feedback, as we continue to really shape the experience that's not only reliable, but also exceptional in every way. So I thank you everyone for listening to me in the first couple of minutes, and I'm really excited to hear everyone's input.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us today, Rowena. And I love that sentiment of, creating a customer-focused business. So hopefully we can steer folks in that direction during today's conversation. A final thank you to our other partners, our program partners, EDC, Mastercard, and YSpace Ella, and our community of ecosystem partners as well, that will add a full list into the Zoom chat for everyone to get to know them. So today's conversation, all about, your customer's journey and their experience with you and your business. So we'll really delve into unraveling those dynamics of the customer service journey and learning how to create a cohesive customer experience that is going to drive more business growth for you. We've prepared some questions for our panelists today. However, if you do have a question, you can write it into the Q&A box at the bottom function bar on your screen, and we'll do our best to answer it live for you. So without further ado, I'm honored to introduce our speakers for today. We have Julie Wang. She's the digital marketing strategist and founder of Tiny Planet Digital. And Deyra J. Fontaine, she is the Senior Customer Experience Manager at Export Development Canada, EDC, as I just mentioned, one of our fantastic partners. Thank you so much for joining today's conversation. So to start us off with the conversation, maybe I can ask you both to identify, the anchor of good customer service. Sorry, good customer experience in your opinion. Julie, maybe I can pass it to you first.
Yeah, of course. So being in the digital space, I think different from UPS, where there's physical deliveries happening, we primarily focus on the digital and online experience. And for that segment of customer journey, I think the most important part is identified by 3 words. It has to be seamless, consistent, and entertaining, where the user or the customer doesn't notice anything, whether that's frustrations or errors or anything like that. It has to feel like a very effortless endeavor where the experience is well designed and they don't have to think, which, is what people are expecting nowadays.
Absolutely. Yeah, people and I think Romy kind of touched on it as well, is that sort of like instant, they want everything kind of packaged for them and seamless, as you said. That's definitely the expectation during today. Deyra, how about yourself? That like one anchor that you think is a good sign of customer experience?
Maybe I'll take the question in a little bit of a different direction, to talk about what you need to create a good customer experience journey. Because ultimately, a good customer journey what it's helpful for is allowing you to understand, to anticipate, and then actually adapt to customer needs and consistently meet those or exceed them at every touch point or interaction. So before you even start designing your customer journey, I think there's two crucial things that you really want to have. And the first is that you want to make sure that you have a very clear vision for the ideal customer experience that your business aims to deliver, with some guiding principles around how you deliver that experience. And second, really fundamentally, is that you need customer empathy, which means, have that deep understanding and genuine care for your customers' feelings, perceptions, their needs, their goals, their challenges, and pain points. Because these two elements are what are going to enable you to make business decisions that prioritize your customer and their experience instead of allowing those things to take a back seat. So a bit of a different way of approaching it. Totally agree with you, Julie, but I think even outside of the actual experience itself, you need to think about how you're going to approach it and prioritize it before you get started.
100%. That's fantastic way to look at it as well, from like the entrepreneur's standpoint and what they can do, and when thinking about this strategy. So Julie, what would you say are the biggest challenges that your organization is facing in delivering consistent customer experiences across different touch points, and perhaps what can early stage entrepreneurs take from?
Yeah. So I thought quite a bit about this question, and I think there is a lot to be said about the technologies used, the platforms you're using, how they're connecting, and things like that that are very specific. But when you take a bird's eye view of the situation, oftentimes I think what is getting in the way, that something that's much easier said than done, is balancing strategy and execution. So one of the biggest gaps here is the overall strategic vision and then the tactical execution. So your strategy might be, I want to provide, this kind of experience, XYZ experience. However, during implementation or execution, practical obstacles like budget constraints, limited resources, changing timelines, how you work with your funders might often change that situation as well. So I think in navigating that, something to consider, especially in the digital space, is the trade-offs. So there's always a trade-off in the digital space between optimizing for performance and delivering a branded customer experience, right? So as an example, a website that is completely, not designed, black and white, plain text would load really, really fast, show up really, really fast on mobile, and rank really well on Google because it's so fast. But then in that case, it lacks the visual appeal and branding elements needed to engage your user and provide the experience that you need effectively. So when you think of an example like that, how do you navigate the best practices of the platform with your brand's kind of vision and strategy you're looking to execute, and work with that? And to give another example, on social media, as most people probably are aware, short form video works really, really well in terms of engagement, but is also one of the most time consuming types of content to produce. So being like an early stage startup founder or entrepreneur, is this something you want to invest in? And how much does that drive your customers' experience? And how much does that matter to your ICP, which is your ideal customer profile? So that, balancing that strategy and execution is always an interesting, challenge here. So I think the key takeaway here is to prioritize, but when setting up your strategy for how you want your customers to feel, how you want them to interact with your brand, how you want them to perceive your brand, outline, instead of what to do, it should be guidelines around what not to do. And I don't want any negative associations with the brand in a certain way to guide your process. And then also, of course, specific KPIs to measure and track success.
Yeah. No, fantastic, Judy. Thank you so much for kind of taking us through this really should be approached. And I think your point about, like the ICP as well is I think what kind of what I'm hearing from you is what it really comes down to is understanding who your customer is and what are their wants, what experience you want them to have throughout the whole process, whether you're, product based or service based, is really understanding what that map looks like for them. And Deyra, I think, yeah, I wanted to talk to you about, understanding and evaluating your customer a little bit.
Oh, for sure. But I just really love what the examples that Julie brought up here, because people often think of brand and customer experience as two totally separate things when in fact they're highly interrelated. And the example of like a really non-branded website that performs really well is a interesting thing to think about, because ultimately, you know, your brand is where your customer experience comes to life. Your brand is how people think about your company, the way it makes them feel, which is customer experience. So, yeah, you might, and this is the key thing that you have to decide as an entrepreneur, as a business owner. Do you trade off, or do you prioritize creating a branded experience that's going to be memorable and really communicate those values and the identity you have as a brand, or are you going to prioritize something else? And so I just wanted to jump in there because I really love those two examples, because it's a key thing that highlights how interrelated these two things are, brand and customer experience.
Absolutely. Thank you. And kind of moving on from that, as well, like talking about those, the brand experience and everything. Can you share a little about EDC's process in profiling the entrepreneurs you work with, or rather the people that are engaging with you, and talking a little bit about how you're identifying who they are, what they're looking for when they're interacting with EDC?
Yeah, so for those who might not be familiar with EDC, we've existed for 80 years, and our mission is to make the Canada and the world better through trade. And so with that, in Canada, there are some 4.6 million businesses of various types and sizes. Of those, less than 260,000 are commercial businesses that could actually use EDC support now and in the future. So that means that some of them are currently selling their goods and services outside of Canada and investing abroad, and then some of them are not. In other words, some are existing exporters and some are future exporters, people we want to inspire to start exporting. So since we're a very large B2B organization, we do have a dedicated customer and market research team, of which I am a part, and we conduct multiple surveys year over year. So for us, it's really important to not only understand the size of our total addressable market, but also those key factors that determine how a business views growth and what their most common or most recurring needs are. So what we did is we created a set of 6 business archetypes based off those key factors like company size, export status, and growth strategy. And the model that we've used allows us to actually map the responses and the data points from different bodies of research to those specific characteristics within those archetypes. So that means that we're able to not only think of the 260,000 businesses within Canada as this homogenous group, but actually think of them as 6 distinct business archetypes and map like what EDC services and products and services can actually apply to the different archetypes. What are the common pain points for each of those archetypes and how we can help overcome them? We're able to look at things like their perception of our brand by business archetype, and what are the key purchasing factors for them. So there's a lot of things that we're able to map thanks to the modeling that has been done. And not only at that business level, what we are also able to do, and what we did do, since we're B2B, is not look just at the types of businesses we support, but who are the people within those businesses? And so we went another layer down and created customer personas based off the key responsibilities that we know interact with us as EDC. So we've got like a suite of customer personas representing individuals that are primary decision makers within that business archetype, influencers within that business archetype. So the people who kind of go out, gather information, serve them up to decision makers so they decide how to manage and grow their business. And then the financial administrator for the different business archetypes. So, you know, we've done a lot with the data and research that we have, and it's really helping us as an organization make key decisions, not just for marketing and for sales, but for product teams, for process teams, for data and technology teams. So it's been really great having that as a foundation for us. I understand it's really extensive given EDC's size, but even if you just start with profiling customer personas and using that as a key tool for understanding who your core customer base is, you're going to see a lot of benefits out of that for sure.
Fantastic. And you kind of led on to my sort of follow-up question with you, Deyra, but any specific tips or like starting points that an early stage entrepreneur could learn from, you know, the extensive profiling that you at an EDC have done, and that they can take away to their, you know, definitely smaller size business. So, you know, where can they start? What should they maybe be focusing on in terms of data to collect, or how perhaps how they could even begin to collect that data?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, obviously, we've got a research team. There's different sources of information or sources of data that you can look at as an entrepreneur to understand who your customer base is. You could definitely do customer interviews one-on-one. You can run surveys. They can be online surveys. You can even dig into your website analytics and social media insights to actually learn about how people are interacting with your brand and what they expect. And not only the ones that you manage as a business, but also take a look at what's outside of your control. What are people saying in online forums about your business? Go take a look there, search. Dig into it and try to understand what perceptions exist so that you can kind of, as I mentioned earlier, meet or exceed the expectations of your target customer base. But there are definitely things I think every business should be considering when it comes to customer journeys specifically. You know, a customer journey mapping is a process in and of itself. So it's really good to break it down and think about like what it includes so that you're able to approach it a little bit more methodically. Because a traditional journey map, which is one of the key tools we're talking about today, or we're talking about journey mapping, there's three things that it includes. There's the overview of who the customer is, the scenario that they're in, what their goals are in that scenario. It's what they're experiencing. So the actions, thoughts, emotions as they go through each of those steps in completing their goal. And then, of course, there's the insights part. There's those opportunities for improvement or those pain points that your customer may be experiencing at each step of your journey. So creating an effective and comprehensive journey map that delivers those three things will definitely take time. And it's a good idea to break it down step by step, which I could, you know, we can chat about what those steps look like for sure.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Deyra. And Julie, very similar to kind of what I asked Deyra, can you talk maybe a little bit about the digital tools though, or perhaps other resources outside of or sorry, with social media, and also perhaps additional resources that business owners could utilize to better understand who their customers are, and so that they can best serve them?
For sure. So social media is quite a simple one, I would assume, for everybody to look up, you know, folks in their niche, what people are saying and how people are interacting with it. But if it really depends where you are in your business and what type of business you operate. So I have a couple tools here if people want to note them down. is FounderPal AI. They have a free user persona generator. It's a really good starting point if you're quite early stage to run that through. Another tool is Probe Labs. It's created in BC, based out of the Vancouver Island area. So what it does is it expedites the customer interviewing process for you. So you could check those out as well. So that's Probe Labs. And then you can always use AI-powered tools like ChatGPT, Cloud to create personas that you can bounce ideas out of. So what you can do is you can describe your ICP or use the AI tools to create one and then ask them like, how do you feel about this if you were in this demographic, if you were of this, consideration. So another tool that's rolling out right now is Google's Gemini, where you can create custom gems. It's not available to everyone, unfortunately, just yet. But what the custom gems are is right now they offer things like career coaching or like life advice, things like that, where you create a persona that you could talk to and in order to have a conversation. So what you would do in the custom gems creations is throw in as much information as possible. My target audience or ICP is someone of a manager level at an enterprise corporation who's about 45 to 50 years old. They live in so-and-so neighborhood. Their income is this and that. They value personal time, fitness, et cetera, to create these custom gems. And then you can bounce ideas off them directly to kind of test your ideas and thoughts. And this is quite early stage if you're running your business. And then some other kind of supporting tools that you could be using is Google Trends, really basic, simple, free tool just to see what people are looking up online. And then keyword research is a good way to analyze people's sentiment and intent online. There are free tools like WordStream, Keyword Planner, and things like that you could access as well. So this is, I guess, available for if you're starting from scratch and very early stage. If you already have some existing assets like a website or an online community, what then you should focus on is Google Analytics on your website to understand customer behavior on your properties, whether that's a website or an app. And then you can use forums and online communities like Discord, Reddit, Facebook groups, and things like that to get a deeper understanding of your ICP, what they care about, what they're looking for, etc. And then I think Deyra mentioned this, but they do a lot of surveying to understand the customers really well. So online survey tools like Google Form, Typeforms, you can always use that to guide direct feedback from your ICP as well. Yeah, hope that helps.
Fantastic. Great. Thank you so much. There's some tools there that I wasn't familiar with, Julie. So thank you so much for sharing. And my colleague Miriam has shared links to each of those tools and websites in the chat as well for anyone watching. In the recording, we'll also link those into the description box as well. So thank you so much. There are fantastic ways that entrepreneurs can dig deeper and find more information on who their customers are. And yes, we've also added into the chat as well. We have a partnership with Sierra, where you can get a free .ca domain as well for anyone who doesn't have a website. That will definitely help you kind of get off and get running. I also want to remind everyone that we can take questions. So you can add them into the Q&A box in the function bar. So please, if you have any questions at all for Deyra or Julie, we can absolutely ask on your behalf. So I'd love to talk a little bit about the strategy. So, the entrepreneur has kind of gone through finding out who their customer is and building out that profile using perhaps some of those tools that you mentioned, Julie, and the the function of creating different personas that you mentioned, Deyra. Um, when you're building out that strategy then, or how can they best implement these personas in customer experience throughout their business? And Deyra, maybe I can pass to you for this.
Yeah, I mean, from my side, I think what's really powerful when it comes to creating personas and journey maps and things like that is that it allows you to be very successful at segmentation at scale, which allows you to improve the customer experience. And a really great way of doing that is leveraging marketing automation, definitely AI, but automation plays a role here too. So as an example, at EDC, we have data that flows between our marketing automation platform and our website, which gives us the ability to tailor our email communications to both existing and prospective customers. Years ago, for example, we knew that many business owners were really fearful of not getting paid by international buyers after taking on new export contracts. So, you can imagine you're a business owner, it's very scary. What if your customer defaults on a payment? What if they go bankrupt? What if they refuse your goods at port of entry? It's a very scary position to be in, a terrifying thought for business owners when you think one big sale can mean the difference between profit and loss for your company. So, we have a credit insurance product that protects businesses when things like that happen, when things go wrong. So for us, it was really important to show potential and existing customers how EDC could remove some of that worry for them. So my example is that when those business owners visited our insurance pages or a key piece of content that we actually tagged with that pain point, it would trigger this consideration email or a short series of emails that explained how EDC could help manage and take on the risk for them. The email itself looked like it was actually coming from one of our trade advisors. It was sent from a trade advisor email inbox. It had their signature on it. It was a personalized greeting with the name based off the data we had from the individual. So it gave the recipient this really personalized feeling. It allowed them to actually schedule a call and speak to a trade advisor one-on-one. That feeling of personalized communication, wasn't delivered because someone was sitting there pumping out all the hundreds of emails one by one. It's because of automation that we were able to do that. We were able to deliver hundreds of emails to hundreds of people without us sitting there and firing them off one-on-one. We set up the email template. We designed a workflow. We put in the tracking mechanism so that our trade advisory team could respond and follow up to people and deliver what I would categorize as a more proactive customer experience at scale. So my key takeaway for this is really that you should take the time to know what your customers' top pain points are, and then proactively design a workflow or an experience that demonstrates how you can help solve their most pressing problems. This is what creates value in the mind of your customers. Don't just over rely on reactive strategies where you're addressing those pain points after the fact. Figure out the ways that you can actually surprise and delight your customers, because that's when the value that you create becomes something memorable for them.
I love that. Even, if I go to a restaurant and the server does something before I even have to ask, that's a very simple example, but they are exceeding your expectations, or they're anticipating my needs, and that's what makes it so memorable. And I have so many newsletters that I'm subscribed to, and I will always click on the ones that start off with "Hi Isabel" or "Hey Isabel, how's it going?" It's just, it almost feels like a personal email to you. And it's just, like you said, just a lot more personable.
Yeah, yeah. And it's what you said, it's that anticipation. It's anticipating and responding to the needs. That's what people value, and that's what sets you apart from other companies, because then you feel like that brand, that company cares about you. They know you. So you become a lot more loyal. You might start advocating for that
Yeah.
brand or company as a result. So
And become a repeat customer, which is what you want. You wanna have those repeat customers. Um, Thank you. And Julie, similar, how can entrepreneurs stay ahead of these curves and adapt to maybe their customers' change in expectations or preferences?
Of course. The digital landscape evolves really, really quickly, and a lot of things always are changing. So it's really important to stay informed on like the changes on platform, preferences, how you can deliver your content, how you can reach your customers, what their expectations are, etc. So I have a few newsletters and podcasts to recommend, such as Marketing Brew, which is kind of a US-based overall industry newsletter. There is one called Today in Digital, run by someone in BC, and then Marketing News Canada. So these really help me keep up with the latest updates, tools, and strategies, and hope they help everyone too. And there's another really interesting customer insights tool called Right Metric. So you could read about specific digital experience, sorry, and digital implementation strategies and examples through their case study library. So I find that really, really intriguing. And then lastly, following industry experts on LinkedIn and other platforms is a really great way to gain insights on emerging trends and best practices and how they're changing. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you so much. And I think it's probably important to highlight as well to everyone here today or watching the recording is this is definitely not something that you do once. It needs to be something that you're kind of like it's ever evolving. You're always updating or staying in tuned with your customer because that, it can adjust or you need to ensure that, you're hitting success at every point in the journey map for your customers. And so I think you both mentioned KPIs at some point during our conversation so far. And so what would your recommendations be in terms of what KPIs or key performance indicators I should in case anyone doesn't know what they are, um uh, what what advice do you have in what KPIs to set and then measuring those KPIs to sort of measure the success of this customer experience? I'll toss it to either of you if you want to take it on.
Well, maybe I'll explain kind of what we have at Export Development Canada. Maybe it will inspire some thoughts among those of you on the call today, because different CX initiatives and measurement will really depend on your business. But there are key things that we at EDC measure enterprise-wide just to make sure we're keeping the customer at the heart of our strategic decision making. And one of those key things is Net Promoter Score. So Net Promoter Score essentially measures how likely a customer is to recommend us to another business associate. And we prioritize this because referral is often considered to be one of the strongest measures of customer loyalty and advocacy because it asks your customer if they would put their own reputation at stake to recommend your company to someone they know. So we use the Net Promoter Score and we take stock of who the detractors, passive respondents are, and who the promoters are. So detractors are anyone who's unhappy with the service and experience that we're providing, who could potentially, harm the brand reputation because they will be outspoken about how we're not meeting their expectations. Whereas on the other end, promoters are those really loyal enthusiasts who will keep buying and fuel growth and refer others because they're very satisfied with our experience. For us, it's really important to keep track of Net Promoter Score across the organization. And we don't just measure the number itself. As part of our surveying, we have open-ended questions where customers give open feedback to us. And that open feedback is something that we make available to anyone and everyone across the organization who wants to hear what our customers saying about us. Are they really willing to put their reputation at stake for EDC? It's really great. That information feeds to our frontline teams. It feeds to a lot of different teams. So it's really helpful for us in monitoring and measuring and analyzing the difference between customers. And I mentioned earlier how we actually created those models of business archetypes, right? To represent our total addressable market. And what's really cool is if you're a data nerd like me, then you can actually look at how NPS differs between different archetypes and see whether our customer service expectations that we're setting are being met consistently from one type of business to another. So, you can start thinking of like how to scale these different measures. Of course, outside of that, we measure a lot of other things like our relationship health and brand health and customer churn as well. But the NPS, the Net Promoter Score, is something maybe for you all to consider instituting within your own businesses at some point, if you're not already.
Yeah, no, that's a fantastic point, and it's actually something that we at Startup Canada measure as well, and we do have a feedback poll at the end of all of our sessions where we ask a few different questions, but one of them is that Net Promoter Score, and it truly is such a testament to a business or to a brand if they have other people kind of being their cheerleaders, if you will, and encouraging others to use their services or buy their products. And Judy, I'll pass that question on to you as well in terms of measuring the success of customer experience initiatives and maybe some KPIs that you would track.
Yeah, for sure. So I guess for context, our perspective as like a boutique full service digital marketing agency, we have a performance focus. So, on behalf of our clients, depending on what kind of business they have, what they value, some KPIs we track in order to, understand customer sentiment, understand whether the digital efforts are effective or not, is click-through rate. It gauges interest and relevancy to see if when someone sees something, do they want to click on it or not? Really, really basic. Something else that you might be interested in tracking is scroll depth on your website. So are they just opening the website and then leaving, or are they actually interacting with the website and looking for more? And then I think interaction rates or engagement rates on all digital touch points would be relevant for people to track as well. There's like a bajillion digital marketing KPIs you can find and track. But at the end of the day, you look at whether people are interested and how much they're interacting with it. So as an example, you could track video views. So what we would be interested is the hook rate, which is how many people are watching 5 seconds or more on videos, or how many people are submitting form submissions on your website or social media links. And then track any conversion rates or key events that might be important to your business. That could be a newsletter, subscription form submission, that could be a phone call, depending on what your business is. And I would say that mostly in our realm, we track bottom or middle of funnel metrics. So that is later in the consideration and decision-making process for the customer, as opposed to more brand awareness, top of funnel metrics, which I think is like the bottom part is relevant in building a lean startup. So I would look into those. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you, Judy. And to go on from that as well, because we've touched a lot on identifying and getting to know your customers, but I'm sure there might be some people who already know who their customers are. They know who's interacting with their business, but perhaps they don't know the best way to reach them, or they don't quite know, like they know who they are, but maybe there's something that's not clicking between their business, their brand, and their customers. Would you have any advice for someone experiencing that?
For sure. I think one, to throw it back to the Startup Canada team, is that there's a lot of organizations like Startup Canada out there. I believe Miriam sent a whole list where you can reach out for help and support, networking opportunities, events, and directories where you can engage with not just your direct customer profile, like people you want to talk to, but people who are associated with them. I think Deyra touched on this earlier, where there is not just your customer who's the decision maker, there is ideally a buying committee, so a whole group of people that influence decision making. That could be a consultant they've hired on to help. It could be a supplier. You become a trusted referral source for them. So identifying that committee outside of your ideal customer profile might be a helpful way for you to, enter the space, get your foot in the door. So as an example, for our business, we serve a lot of clients in the travel and hospitality space. And in order to reach more people in the travel and hospitality space, we talk to photographers, video production companies that work in this space. They offer something similar to us, but we don't do the exact same things. But then in that way, we can share contacts and information in that specific industry niche as well.
Interesting. That's a very creative way to go about it, I think. Deyra, I don't know if you have anything to add to that point.
I mean, I think Julie covered anything I would have said. I think ultimately, your customer profile, your customer journey, everything you know about your customer. What I would add is make sure you're validating it. It was mentioned before how this isn't something that's set in stone and that's static. You have to continuously refine these tools as you learn more, as the market changes, as your business context changes, as your objectives change. So you want to make sure that you're proactively doing that. And I would say to make sure that your communications, your marketing remains targeted, do testing as well. Do targeted testing to find out if those channel choices and those messaging or the messaging that you've aligned to your different, audience profiles actually resonate still with the customer personas that you've created. If you don't test, then you won't know. So test and iterate. It's probably the only thing I would add there.
And excellent takeaway from that for sure. We have a question in the Q&A box, and I want to make sure because I think it's a great example of trying to convey the importance of customer service within your business and how it interlocks into various different things. So Zoe has asked, and I think Zoe, their business name is Sharp Processes. And they've asked, as a startup partner, how can I convince my partner that CX is important to plan when they just want to focus on delivering product and processes? Who would like to take this?
I can just start by saying, without customers, your business won't exist. I mean, if you're not delivering an experience that at the very least satisfies your customer base, then your business will very quickly become irrelevant to your customer base. So every department, every person within an organization touches the customer experience in one way or another. You might need to track it back a few steps, but ultimately, like everything that everyone in an organization does impacts the customer experience in one way or another. I was listening to a podcast recently and someone talked about invoicing and how the person in the, I guess, the accounts department was responsible for some data inputs that showed up on an invoice. That person didn't know that those data fields were showing up on an invoice. So customers were getting this invoice that was really hard to read. And it's only because someone with a customer-centric mindset decided to bring people together and demonstrate the importance of customer experience that the person who made those invoice fields was able to uncover, oh dear, these codes and things that I've been putting in place actually are seen by customers. Someone in a back-end role might not understand how their job impacts the front end experience for a customer. But ultimately, every single person in an organization touches the customer experience in one way or another. And without your customers, there is no business. So, I mean, I'm a huge advocate for customer experience, obviously, being a senior customer experience manager and having worked in marketing. So for me, the customer is key. And you will find that investing in the customer experience will actually benefit your business in both the short term and the long term. It's what will set you up for long-term success.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. To kind of second Deyra's point is that, yeah, if there's no customers, you don't really have a business, right? So I think in this case, I would be curious to ask your partner, like, why the focus on delivering products and processes? I think that comes with a lot of startup sentiment where it's like, I build a product that is so good that it will sell itself. And being a marketer and working in the space, that is just not true. You can have the best technology, the best product, but if your ideal customers are not receiving or perceiving that message correctly, it just won't connect and you won't be able to attract the right people. So yeah, I guess to Zoe's question, I would throw the question back at your partner to say, well, how do you think delivering the right processes and product would attract customers? Like, how would that work realistically, right?
Yeah, I
Excellent.
love that. Spin the question around to uncover what's behind that that sentiment. Yeah, because you definitely shouldn't be making decisions based on assumptions or personal opinions. You should ground them in facts and data. So, and that comes from talking to your customers and understanding them.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Good point. Thank you both for defending Zoe. Zoe, I hope you can play this back to your partner and hopefully have a good conversation about it. And hopefully you get to move on with doing more customer experience in depth for your business. I have a question that I didn't plan speakers, so forgive me for kind of just jumping on and asking. Um, because we are kind of going to the end of our time. I'm curious to know if there's any experiences that you've had with another business that um either was negative, but you learned something from it, um, or it was a really positive experience and you thought, wow, I've never experienced that before. They've I'm now like a loyal customer, or I will definitely be tooting their horn to anyone I meet.
It's a great question. um, I don't want to go ahead. Sorry, Julie.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, just a very recent experience to share on shopping online, really basic thing, of how important it is to set expectations in your customer's journey. So I purchased some apparel on a website and I was very excited about it. It came and it was not the right size. And on the website, it said, free exchanges, super simple, etc. So I did trust that. But then it turns out that when I had to exchange it, it was an extremely manual process and I had to pay for shipping both ways as a customer. But if that was outlined as an expectation when I had purchased, I don't think I would have had a negative experience in the shopping. Whereas when it came out, when I was really trying to get rid of this item because it didn't fit me and I had to pay for all that, it made me not want to interact with the brand anymore after that. So just from personal experience.
Yep.
Excellent.
The one experience that always comes to mind for me is actually a negative experience as well. And it's from a very, very long time ago, and I'll be exposing my ignorance here a little bit, but that's okay because it'll at least help you understand where I'm coming from. So When I was a student in university, I refused to get a cell phone. I didn't really believe that I needed one, but I did at the end of the day. So I received one, I got one, and I didn't understand how you were charged for like airtime and roaming and stuff like that at the time. So being the diligent person that I am, I called up the telecoms company and I explained how I was traveling from one city to another and I wanted to make sure that I wouldn't get charged extra for the fact that I wasn't in a single location where my plan was set up. The person on the other end of the line reassured me. They said, "Yeah, you're going to be fine. Everything will be fine." I was not fine, actually. As a student, I ended up getting a bill that was really, really high. I'm talking of about like hundreds of dollars over two bills. So at the end, $1,000+ as a student in cell phone fees because I used the phone a lot because of a certain situation I was in. I did everything that I thought was possible to call that company. I trusted that company. I spoke to a rep. They reassured me, and then at the end of the day, I was charged a lot of money, and I didn't understand why because I didn't understand how my cell phone plan worked. I trusted that the company would explain to me and give me the information that I needed to set up, my phone for the travel I was going through. They didn't, however, and then when the bill came through, I called them up, I explained it, and I was blamed. I was told that I was wrong. I was told that I lied. I was told that, I should have known this and all of these things. And a lot of the blame was placed on me. There was no apology. And I was actually threatened by the telecoms company that they would, send creditors after me and sue me if I didn't pay my bill. To this day, I advocate to everyone that I know not to use that telecoms company because of the horrible, horrible experience that I had as a student. This is years and years ago, but today that experience still fills me with a negative emotion. I still look at that company. Their brand is completely tarnished to me. I switched providers as soon as I could. But you can see how that one negative experience from one person on the end of the phone completely changed my relationship with the telecom company. And now, not only do I not use them, but I make sure all my family and all my friends also don't use them. So, I mean, it's a telecoms company, but can you imagine what that would be if it was a smaller business? How much of an impact that could have on your bottom line? So, invest in frontline experience, I guess, is my point, in making sure that, in those frontline experiences where emotions are high, where people are actually interacting with another person, make sure you're investing in that and ensuring that it reflects your values as a brand, your values as a company, and that, the customer is top of mind, is center to how you're providing experiences on the front line.
Excellent points. Yeah, it's totally true. I mean, I've had super bad experiences with telecom. I feel like everyone's probably had a bad experience with a telecom or internet provider at some point, or maybe airline. Um, but excellent examples. Thank you so much. So in true customer service or customer experience fashion, I now would love to know how all of our attendees today felt about their experience in coming along today. So we do have a quick feedback poll that's shot up on screen. So I'd greatly appreciate if you can answer that. We do have one question from Heidi in the Q&A box. I know we have a minute left. Heidi's asking how to prioritize all these wonderful tactics with little to no budget, already being overcommitted with personal funding for the business. Is there anything quickly either Deyra or Julie want to say to Heidi?
Yeah, I would say most of the tools I recommended are free. So that should be helpful enough, I hope. And then I believe Startup Canada and the Forum for Women Entrepreneurs, a lot of these nonprofits offer free programming as well.
Excellent. Thank you so much. All right. Well, that is today's webinar. Thank you all so much for coming and joining us today. Julie and Deyra, thank you so much for your time and expertise, as well as your energy. It takes a lot to show up to these things. So thank you so much for showing up for us and our community today. One last thank you to our co-presenting partners, Scotiabank Women Initiative and UPS, program partners, Export Development Canada, Mastercard and YSpace Ella, and our wide community of ecosystem partners as well. So this is our final webinar of the year. We invite you to subscribe to our Startup Canada newsletter for updates on the 2025 program and follow-up resources as well. We'll share that into the chat along with our Startup Women resource guide. But I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of your day. We'll keep this room open a little bit longer to get everyone's feedback in. But to our speakers, Deyra and Julie, you're very welcome to leave now and go on with your day. Thank you so much.